Hello, everyone. I'm Keith Distone with the Center for Hellenic Studies, and I'm here as usual with Greg Nagy and Sarah and Jenna and Elen for HeroesX office hours. This is for v16 of HeroesX. And we're talking about the discussion on the forums in response, Greg, to your questions related to hours 18 and hour 19. So these are the Sophocles tragedies that we're discussing in these 2 hours. And your first question is, in the course of our readings, we have seen ancestral customs involving the interaction of myth and ritual form a distinctly localized phenomenon. How does the drama Oedipus at Colonus by Sophocles, who is a native son of Colonus, enhance the understanding of the myth and ritual related to Oedipus, not only for the people of Colonus, but also for the people of all Athens as an overall state? It's a complex geography to read aloud in a question, but Colonus is a subset of Athens, and the tragedy has to do with all of Athens, but also just with Colonus. Hence the question.
I think the way Keith just said it is so beautiful, because the subset can become the set at any point. At least when we read the Sophocles drama, and it's amazing how easily we can go from subset to set. And the subset, the word for it would be dēmos, which is a very important word for Athenian state formation. We're tempted to translate it as people, but a more accurate translation, if you go far enough back, would be district. And when I say district, I'm thinking of districts even as they existed back in the second millennium before our era. So curiously, what many of us would think of as an invention of the late 6th and early 5th century, which is democracy, is so radical as to go back to the roots of the second millennium BCE, where dēmos, or let's pronounce it the way they pronounced it then, dāmos, actually meant district. A district, however, that had a mind of its own, so to speak, because a district could take people to court, so to speak. In other words, there could be juridical deliberations where the dāmos, the dēmos, if I can fast forward into the first millennium BCE, can take people to court as if the dēmos were a person. It's just such a marvel to me that something so radically new is therefore going back to the roots, which is what radical means, and the roots would take us all the way back to the second millennium before our era. So yeah, Colonus was around, I think, already in the second millennium BCE as a dāmos.
Well, let's now talk about what the participants are saying on the forums. Elen.
Yes. So one participant is wondering, Oedipus, while seeking a place of rest for his body, Oedipus speaks of Thebes in terms of aligning himself with Athens. So is it what Sophocles is doing, aligning himself with the interest of Athens against Thebes?
Exactly. That's exactly what's happening. And of course, this kind of realignment is typical of the mentality of hero cult. If we accept the argument that the body of a hero, of a cult hero, is a talisman of not just fertility, but prosperity, good fortune for a given community, then it only goes to show that whatever community wants to have good fortune should try to own the hero's body, even if the hero is not native to the local Mother Earth. And Oedipus is clearly a transplant from Thebes to Athens. And in terms of the late 5th century BCE, the political situation is such that Thebes and Athens are mortal enemies. So it only goes to show that if Athens is the enemy of Thebes, then the possession of the body of Oedipus will be contributing to the good fortune of Athens and to the bad fortune of Thebes. So our participant has really nailed it. I completely agree with their formulation.
Oedipus is not coming to any place. This is a very sacred place before him already. And he's getting in touch with the previous heroes. And he's making libations. Is he also modeling to Athenians the way he needs to be honored?
What a beautiful comment. And our participants are coming up with such incisive insights. I can only agree and admire the formulation. There is modeling going on here, and you're so right, Janet, to help me focus on the fact that this sacred place is sacred to such a variegated succession of cult heroes. If we go back in time, again, I would say very easily that the kinds of myths and rituals that are reflected in the present, which is the late 5th century, those kinds of myths and rituals do date back to the 2nd millennium before our era. But then as you trace your steps forward in time and try to reconstruct forward in time, the culmination is this transplant. And the transplant from Thebes to Athens is modeling for the body politic, who are the Athenian citizens, who are, quote unquote, the audience of Athenian state theater. There's modeling here for the body politic of the here and now. And then we could take it maybe one step further, which is that Sophocles himself, who is nearing the end of his life and who was already dead by the time this particular drama had its first showing, in a sense, he's modeling himself as a potential native son par excellence of Colonus, and dare I say it, as a hero in the making himself.
One of our participants has been talking about how Theseus continues a tradition here by passing on the mystery, but also picking up on how the description of the way Oedipus dies or did not die. So there are many potential ways of dying.
Yes.
Is there particular significance to the way different heroes died who may potentially have been associated with the space?
Yes, because again, what we see is variety, and variety is the essence of what I don't like to call Greek religion, because religion has been, as a word, twisted in so many ways in our time. So I prefer to say myth and ritual, where ritual includes myth. And if you look at it that way, that kind of complex, the myth-ritual complex, is by its own nature varied. There are so many variations on the theme of the ancient Greek hero, whether the hero is he or she, that in a sense, you can't pin the hero down to any one way of dying. to any one way of immortalization after death.
Well, let's continue talking about Oedipus in the other tragedy that we have read. And that's how your question begins. Now that you have read Oedipus Tyrannus by Sophocles and previously Oedipus at Colonus, can you think of other instances of heroic pollution being purified? Or can you at least think of other instances of heroic pollution that need to be purified?
And of course, here is the conundrum that I have, at first sight, it seems arbitrarily, chosen to deal with Oedipus at Colonus first, even though that is a much later composition by Sophocles, and to deal with Oedipus Tyrannos second, even though that is more than 2 decades earlier. So what's going on here? I just find that Oedipus Tyrannos, which reflects the take of Sophocles in an earlier phase of his life. He was already old then, but it's still earlier. Oedipus Tyrannos is less preoccupied with the hero cult of Oedipus, which is localized not just at Colonus, but also at the ground zero of the Areopagus in the center of Athens. So even within the city-state complex of Athens, there's more than one way of worshiping Oedipus. But I'm saying that there's not much of an overt hero cult in Oedipus Tyrannos by comparison with Oedipus at Colonus. So that's why we went the reverse order, so to speak, at least in terms of the creativity of Sophocles. But that said, there are traces of hero cult even in Oedipus Tyrannos, but there we're thinking of him as venerated by the body politic of Thebes, which already then, not just later in the 5th century, already roughly 2 decades before the Oedipus at Colonus, was already a deadly enemy of Athens and had been for some time. So in a sense, we almost have a kind of negative image of Oedipus as a potential cult hero of Thebes. He's not a good fit, is he? Because he is not only the source of bad luck, bad fortune, as opposed to good fortune for the community, but he really has to be purged from the community. So with the advantage of our having considered Oedipus as cult hero in Oedipus at Colonus, it's easier for us to see just what kind of dysfunctionalities, are in play in Oedipus Tyrannos. And it's no accident that it seems that already in the ancient world, the way people thought of this drama was not Oedipus the king. In Latin, we would translate Oedipus Rex, but rather Oedipus Tyrannos, Oedipus the tyrant, who would be, from the point of view of Athenian democracy in the second part of the 5th century BCE, an unconstitutional ruler, not a constitutional one.
And as you said, he needs to be purged from the city-state of Thebes that we see there. What about the participants? Did they come up with other occasions of heroic pollution outside the Oedipus story?
Yeah, certainly. One mentions Agamemnon and the Atreus dynasty, who certainly require.
Yes. It's rotten to the core. rotten to the core.
Did they give specific examples?
Well, they say that Agamemnon gave his daughter as sacrifice to Artemis to change direction of winds. So that was one.
Yeah.
But then it even goes back to the Atreus family, where there is mention of incest, of other pollution, and yeah.
But isn't it something that in our journey through the world of heroes, starting with the Homeric Iliad, and now here we are at the apogee of classical Greek, quote unquote, literature, Athenian state theater. And all along, we've seen that heroes are not necessarily admirable. They may be much, much superior to us in some ways, but in other ways, because they didn't live in a world of ordered ritual, they just can't help but be shockingly dysfunctional here and there. And so our misled ways of sometimes understanding the word hero as we borrow it from the ancient Greek can lead to such misunderstandings. We think that a hero, sometimes we assume that a hero should always be admired, but by now that we see a figure like Oedipus, we admire what is larger than life about heroes, but we're shocked by their capacity to do unspeakable acts of what in quote unquote today's world would be immorality. And so if anything, one big takeaway in our journey together is that for the ancient, heroes are not models for behavior 100% of the time. If they were, we'd be in real trouble. They're models for what can go wrong in life and how we can fix it. But that's another matter.
This poster is wondering what disloyalty, dishonesty, mistreatment of defenseless people or animals cause pollution, and thinking of maybe Odysseus killing the suitors or killing the slave woman.
Yeah. Well, the pollution is so all-pervasive, isn't it? And many classicists have thought that the Oedipus Tyrannos, as composed by Sophocles, must have happened in the context of the horrible plague that devastated the body politic of Athens in the second part of the 5th century BCE. So to put it in terms of Aristotle's analysis of tragedy, and here Aristotle is wearing his hat as a biologist as well as a philosopher. I guess that's two hats. Is okay, if he's a biologist, he talks about purging the pollution. That's almost medical, isn't it? But you can also talk about it philosophically as a purifying of pollution. And in a sense, the fact that we have to go through this tragedy ourselves emotionally, and for us, pathos is emotion. For Oedipus, it's a larger than life passion. But in a sense, there's a continuum between larger than life passion and emotion. We all experience catharsis, or let's pronounce it in the way American English speakers would pronounce it, catharsis, which means, for Aristotle, either purging, there's your medical take, or purification. There's your philosophical, or if I may say, myth ritual take.
There's been a fair bit of discussion back and forth, trying to understand what perhaps in modern times we would consider pollution, and in the very, very broadest sense, and
Yes.
destruction acts carried out by rulers of whatever kind,
Yes.
and how similar or different that might be to how the ancient Greeks would have perceived.
Yes. Yes, and I think the big difference is that we today tend to blame society for everything that goes wrong. I would say the ancients held on to the idea that society may be the context in which things can be set right again. And if anything, it's our human nature that makes things go bad, but maybe civilization can make us better. Maybe government can make us better if the government is good and not bad.
That would tie into our readings from last week with the praise of the jury system, you could say. It's a model of how government makes the problems go aright after the fact, of course. But.
Exactly the way you said it, Keith. And of course, it's easier for an Aeschylus because a lot of the traumas that happened to the body politic of Athens haven't happened yet. So it's easier for Aeschylus to be a social optimist. It's harder for Sophocles to be a social optimist. So we might leave each other with the big question, is Sophocles a pessimist or an optimist about the future? The answer isn't all that clear.
That would be a great discussion question.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, maybe next time, or maybe in V17, that can be our discussion question.
I'd love that.
Keep looking to the future here.
But I was so taken with the reflective comments of our participants. This is a great group.